Hi guys, Happy New Year! I have no idea where the end of 2017 went. So I hope you're all well, and I'm so sorry that it's taken me so long to make another video. I know several of you have been patiently waiting, prodding me, saying, when will you make a new one? And there's all sorts of reasons in life and whatever. But I am finally back. Yay! And I'm really excited to be back. I'm going to do a WIP update for October, November and December. But hopefully it will be worth your wait because I have two really exciting finishes to show you. So I won't drag it out anymore. Let's get on with it. I'm Hannah. This is Handmade. So as I said, it's been a really long time since my last video and I'm so sorry about that. I'm not going to give you loads of excuses because, to be honest, just about everything contributed to the long wait. But I haven't been doing as much stitching, and that's because at the end of September I started a private tutoring business. So for those of you who aren't in the UK, teenagers when they're 16 and when they're 18 do qualifications, and those qualifications, so when they're 16, those qualifications will dictate what they can do in education after they're 16 and also job opportunities, and then they do another round again when they're 18. And so I've said before, I did a degree in theoretical physics, and I did A-levels, which is the qualifications at 18, in maths and physics and computing. And so I've started doing private tuition for those subjects, and it's been really fun. Surprisingly, I mean, within a week I had loads of clients. So it's been really good. It's been really fun, but it's been a lot of work, a lot more work than I expected. So that, along with other things and family things and life and just general, has meant that I've got a lot less stitching time than I thought. But even with that said, I have managed to finish my oldest project on my book, and that was Romantic Walk. It's a kit from Zloto Runo, and thanks Marina, apparently my pronunciation is terrible, which doesn't surprise me whatsoever, but it's based on artwork by Leonid Afremov, and I can't remember actually what the original artwork title is. It's not A Romantic Walk. No, I can't remember. So I'll put a title, or put it in the description. But I started this in 2015, January 2015, and I finished it in October. So it took me 2.5 years. It's completely full coverage on 16 count white Ada, Madeira threads, which I did actually run out of a couple, but because it's an impressionist style painting, it didn't really matter that I didn't replace the colours exactly. So there's a sort of turquoisey colour there and one of these orangey colours over here, that I had to substitute with some DMC, but because I've got the DMC colour card, that was really easy. So yeah, I'm so pleased to finally have got it finished. Yay! So if you follow me on Instagram, you'll have seen this already, but you know, why not show it again? I'm really happy with it. And there's a tiny little bit of back stitching. There's green backstitch just in this tree over here. I'm not sure if you can even see it. I mean, there's so little of it, it hardly seemed worth it. I don't know if I can bring it in a bit closer. But it is there. So it's a strange full coverage plus backstitch, which you don't normally get. There we are. I've got plans to frame it, or at least my intention is to frame it. I don't have a frame. I don't know anything about what I'm going to do, what colour mount I want, or anything like that. But I want to get it framed this year and up on my wall. See? And completely standard, I forgot to show you the back. So here is the back. And you can see, do you know, it's not, considering I was parking, it's nowhere near as messy as I expected it would be. You can see up at the top, before I started doing parking, there's all of these, you can see them over this side, all of these tufts where I was turning the project over and securing the thread at each colour change, and that's what made me put it down in the end. It was just, oh, unbearable. I couldn't keep doing that. But with parking, and also with the parking, I started doing pin stitch finishes, you know, securing the threads with pin stitch, which was a bit of a pain with the Ada, but it did make it, I didn't have to flip my project, and that made the whole thing more bearable. But with the other ones, other kits like this that I've got, I think I'm going to substitute even weave, so that I can do the pin stitches without having to pierce the Ada blocks, because I really don't like doing that. So after finishing the Aframoth piece, I decided to go back to one of my old WIPs, because I'd just made that WIP parade video for you, and I was thinking it was shameful how many I had and that I wasn't putting any work into them. So I picked up DMC Fantasia Damson Unicorn, and I put in more of the tree and a fair bit of this half stitch sky, but I got to this point and I didn't have any of the 3856 to do the rest of the sky, so I put in a bit of the metallics. This is Petite Treasure Braid 2 strands, which was a bit of a faff. I don't like working with metallics with 2 strands if I can avoid it. That's one of the reasons why I kind of go for Kreinik if I can. But anyway, so I wanted to get more of this sky done, but I ran out of the DMC. Now this is all half stitch. So I was saying in my WIP parade how in Sakura it's got a load of half stitch background, and I'm doing it in basket weave to avoid the distortion of the fabric. And I decided to do basket weave for this half stitch sky as well. I mean, I'm less concerned because this is I think it's a Murano. It's Vigart, it's got the orange band, sky blue 32 count Murano, I think. It's either 32 count or 28 count Brittany. But the reason, if you haven't seen it before, the reason why it's called basket weave, that even though it's half stitches on the front, is because if you look at the backs, this is the back of the project, if you look at the back there, can you see that there's sort of alternating warp and weft, like it looks woven, the pattern of the stitches on the back. So it looks a bit like basket weave, and hence that's why it's called basket weave. And it's really that, having the stitches on the back being vertical and horizontal, that's what stops your fabric getting skewed. It ends up sort of pointing towards a corner, stretched along the bias basically. But doing it this way stops that happening because all your stitches are aligned on the back with the warp and the weft. There you go. There's still an awful lot left to do in this project, and I haven't even got anywhere near anything interesting. Not got near the damsel or the unicorn. So yeah, but hopefully I'll get back to it soon. I've got no goals for it, so I think we're still in October at this point. I'm trying to do it chronologically. And at some point in October, I got this sickness bug, and as I say, I was busy with this new business, and basically I'd get home and I'd just be absolutely exhausted, and I didn't want to do anything, and my stitchy bug was suffering. And so in a bid to sort of revive my motivation and enthusiasm for stitching a bit, I decided to relent on working on the WIPs and treated myself to a new start. Now it's always a slippery slope because you start one new thing, and then in order to choose what to start, you have to look through all the kitted stuff that you've got, and then it's not enough. You don't just want to start one thing, you want to start a million things. So yeah, but the one that I chose to start is this. It's Sandy Seasons by Siba Designs. She's a black work designer, I think from Turkey. And I got this chart, oh, it's a bit tangled up. I got this chart off of Etsy, but not long after I bought it, there was some issues with, I don't know, I think it was a regulation change. And so she had to take all her patterns down and close her Etsy store. So it's quite difficult to get hold of this pattern now. I don't know, I think there's some stores that do carry paper copies of Siba designs. But if you have a store that sells paper copies of other patterns, maybe you could request, if you're interested, you could request that they get in this pattern. I don't know. But it's an electronic pattern, as I say, so I'll insert a picture of what it will look like when it's finished. One of the reasons that I started this one, chose this one, was because I thought, oh, that's black work, that won't take long to do. I can have a nice little quick finish, and you know, that'll revive my stitchy bug. Yeah, so famous last words. Just because it's black work doesn't mean that it's quick. I mean, it is really enjoyable, but there's a lot of confetti stitches in the tree, and I haven't even got one out of the 4 seasons done before I was like, no, this isn't working. But it's nice actually, because it's obviously black work, but this is the black work's actually done in a brown. So I'm really excited for it to be finished, but I don't know. I wasn't feeling it, so I had to put it down. Oh, and it's 28 count antique white Brittany, I think. Yeah, it definitely looks like an even weave. So a new start hadn't helped to revive my stitchy bug. So I thought, if my aim is to get another finish to try and revive my interest, then I should go through and pick a WIP that's close to being done and try and get that one finished. And that would be a lot quicker than trying to start something new and finish it, because I never pick small projects. So I went and picked up Papillon Creations, How Does Your Garden Grow? And got this much done. So just this little bit here. And then realised, no, this isn't helping my stitchy bug. In fact, this is making it worse. And it's nothing to do with the design per se. Like I do like it. I'm still feeling a bit weird, like on my colour choices, but I always do this. I always second guess myself. But I think I was fed up of stopping and starting and changing colours and fastening off threads and all of this kind of thing. And this one, it is quite a lot of that, especially with the specialty stitches. You do one specialty stitch and then you've got to change colour because the next specialty stitch is in a different colour. So, yeah. So then I thought, right, well, let's try another new start. And this next start that I had, I'd seen, I mean, it's a perennial favourite of stitches. You see it often. Many people have stitched it. It's a kit. But the thing is, it's a Dimensions Gold kit, and they can be pretty expensive. It's not like, I mean, you guys in the US, it always seems like you've got coupons coming out and your stores are having sales and all of that kind of thing. Well, I don't know, maybe I'm just a rubbish shopper and I hate shopping, so this could be true. But I never seem to find those. But I did find this kit on Amazon, and particularly on Amazon, although I'm sure other sites have it as well. But there are websites that you can enter your item on Amazon, tell it what price that you're looking to buy that item for, and it will watch the item's price as it changes and then send you an email either when the price drops to the lowest it's been in quite a while and they reckon it's a good deal, or when it gets below your target price. And you can see like the whole history of the price of the item, so you can figure out, you know, whether the seller has sort of an annual sale where it gets a decent price and all of that, a decent discount and all of that kind of thing. And so I did that on this project, Dimensions Gold Full Ferry. So I'm sure you've all seen it. I think it was Miss Oh So Crafty showing hers that finally tipped me over the edge. And then so I signed up with this, I think it's called Camel, the website that I used. And I got this and the, you know, the companion, that's the word, companion piece, Woodland Enchantress. I put them both on this price alert website and got them both for basically half price, which I thought was pretty good. So I decided, I looked at the two and I thought, right, I'm going to start this one for Ferry, probably because it was October, so fall going into winter. Although strictly speaking we call it autumn, but you know. So I got the kit out, looked at the fabric. It's this 16 count, I think they call it grey, but it's quite blue grey, Ada, and it was stiff as stiff as you like. And I thought, I'm not going to enjoy stitching on that if it's that stiff, because cross stitching is such a tactile experience that if you don't enjoy the feel of the materials that you're working with, you're going to be spending probably hundreds of hours, maybe, I mean, a decent chunk of time working with it. So I thought, no, that's not going to work for me. So I did a bit of research on removing, because it's the sort of starch or the sizing that they put in the fabric when they're weaving it on the big machines that makes it that stiff. And you can get different kinds of sizing, so starch is one of them, but there's all sorts of others. And depending on which starch they've used, which sizing they've used, you need a different method to remove it. But I thought, well, I'll just give it a go. Hopefully, with the soak in water and detergent, it's the right kind of sizing that will sort it out. And so I used this stuff. I just put it in warm water and put a little bit of this stuff in. Now this is Orvis WA paste. I don't know if you can see that there. This is actually, funnily enough, basically horse shampoo. But it's a mild, I mean, you equestrians out there, I'm not an equestrian, but you'll correct me or whatever if I'm wrong. But I think it's for cleaning white horses or pale horses, getting the dirt off. But it's a really mild detergent. And they actually use it in conservation of quilts and textiles and things like that, so to try and clean up old quilts. So I got this for the weaving that I did, because you always have to wet finish your weaving. So I gave that a go, and basically this whole tub, like, you can see how little I've used of it. You only use a tiny amount, so it's brilliant. It works really well. And it did the job. This is so much less stiff. So it's got so much more drape. It's so much nicer feel to it. It's still, you know, it's still Ada, so it's still got its structure. It did close the holes up a little bit washing it, but it made it much nicer to work with. And then, I mean, you can see I only got a little bit done. Sort of the typical dimensions gold. Half stitches in loads of different colours, and cross stitches in different numbers of strands and all of that kind of thing. But I mean, I'm pleased with what I've done so far, but I didn't really get much done before, again, I was getting itchy feet or itchy fingers. So when I'd looked through all of my projects, my kitted projects, thinking what can I start, they all started clamouring at me to start them. And this one, this next one, another new start, was one I'd seen the artwork, I don't even remember where, and I thought, oh, I love that, but it's an out of print kit. And so this is Indian Brave and Maiden by Janlin. The artwork's by Roger W. Reinardi. And this is a pretty tricky kit to get hold of, but I put an eBay search on and I kept seeing actually someone's finished cross stitch coming up on eBay. I was like, I don't want that, I want to stitch it. So finally, this finished kit, you know, someone's used it all up, that's the remnants of their threads. So it's just the chart. Came up on eBay and I thought, brilliant, you know, and snapped it up. But looking at it, The kit would have come with 14 count Ada, and that would have made it, each one, 5 inches wide by 20 inches long. And I thought, I don't really want them that big. And I'd been playing around with the idea for a while. I wanted to give 40 count a go. So I thought, oh, this is perfect, because if I do it on 40 count, then I can fit both of them on a fat quarter. And then I'll get my, experiment with 40 count, and I'll have them at a reasonable size. I bought some 40 count Verdal from Zygarde, which is, so it's not linen, it's basically the same fabric composition as your Luganas or your Britneys or your Muranos. And I made a start. And this is how far I got. So as you can see, not very far. And the reason is, I started off doing 1/2 and quickly realised that for these patches of dark solid colour, the coverage just was not good enough. And so you can see at the side, I did a little experiment. I thought, well, maybe I'll do 2/2, but will that be too bulky? And so I tried it out and it wasn't too bulky. So I gave it a go. I tore it all out, restarted, doing 2 strands over 2, and got that far. And then I thought, the whole point of this was to try 1/2 on 40 count. And whilst it's not too bulky, it's not fun trying to do 2/2 on 40 count. So I stopped, and I thought I might as well restart this on a 36 or maybe a 32 count if I'm going to be doing 2 strands over 2. And then I can tear out the stitches and reuse the 40 count for something else. So I'm not sure what I'm going to use the fabric for now. I was thinking possibly maybe trying a hardanger on 40 count, although I'm not sure if I've got threads fine enough. I might have to see if I can get some sort of tatting cottons or something that are a bit finer, or possibly doing some sort of specialty stitch design. I'm not really sure, but yeah, I was really fed up, to be honest, with that, and that didn't help with my mission to try and revive my stitchy bug. And I think it was, I'm so behind on Flosstube. I think I'm still back in August, but I'm sure I just recently watched a video by Olivia B where she had a similar experience. She tried to do 40 count 1/2 in one of her projects, and it had black, I think it was an ink circles design, I'm not sure, and the coverage just wasn't good enough. So I second that opinion, but because I'm hardly into it at all, I'm just going to tear it out and figure something else out. So I was getting a bit worried about my stitchy bug really at this point, because I think I'm getting into November now, and it didn't matter what I started, it wasn't working. It didn't matter if I picked up old projects, it wasn't working. And then I was getting more and more run down, and then eventually I got to the point where I just didn't want to do anything. I didn't have the capacity to do anything except for the most basic stitching. So I decided to bring out Save the Stitches, and I put in a little bit. I hadn't done much of the metallics in the blocks that I'd completed previously when I showed you in my WIP parade. But I decided that working in one strand of pearl cotton, counting in 10s or 9s, I could manage. So I decided to put in as much as of the outlines of the other blocks as I could cope with. And so now I haven't done any more of the filling stitches, but now I'm ready to go ahead with several of the blocks. I think I got up to sort of block 16 or something, the outline on. I mean, there's not much fabric left really. That's the fabric that's left. I'm good to go. I mean, when I'll feel like coming and doing the filling stitches, I don't know, because it does take a little bit of mental wherewithal to identify the pattern that's best to go around the filling stitches. But at least I was stitching. That was the bit I was worried about. I thought if I stop stitching, there's a danger that I won't pick it up for years. Again, I'll just completely go off of it. So I wanted to keep my hand in, and I managed to do that. So, and mine's exactly on the called for materials. I probably said this in my WIP parade, but whatever. So I think it's 25 count Silvery Moon, Zweigart, Lugana, DMC 310 Pearl Cottons, and then the DMC metallics on the spool. So it's the same colours, but the ones on the spool rather than the light effects in the skein. So when I put that down, yet again, the box of kitted up projects were calling at me, they were beckoning. So I thought, why not? You know, it's better to start something new and be stitching than to try and force myself to work on a WIP and completely destroy my stitchy bug. So I picked out this project, which was from my birthday haul in June, and it's Anchor the Galleon. Now, I'd originally seen it in a cross stitch magazine, probably a cross stitch gold, I'm not sure, I can't remember. But then I thought, given that I don't have a complete, I mean, I have quite a lot of anchor threads actually, anchor colours, but I don't have a complete collection of that like I do the DMC. So I thought I'd be just as well, it would probably be cheaper to buy the kit than it would be to try and buy all the individual skeins. So I got the kit for my birthday and I made a start on it. Now the reason this appeals to me is because just look at the play of light. I'm sure it reminds me of a famous oil painting, but there are so many oil paintings of galleons that I don't know if I've just kind of made that up. But I'd imagine that they've taken it from some piece of artwork. But just look, I mean, you think, what's the colour of clouds? And you think, well, grey and white. But they've got lilacs and lavenders and yellows and blues and creams and, oh, and in the sails as well. And then all these rich blues in the sea. It's beautiful, the play on light and the dimensionality. So it's on 16 count Ada that came in the kit. I mean, I've said before that I prefer even weave over Ada. And that's mainly because I like to do pin stitches to finish and sometimes to start threads, but mainly to finish threads. And I don't like piercing Ada blocks, but I will use Ada, and it can, especially when you've got half stitch background, if your design doesn't have fractional stitches in it, it is, you know, I'm more than prepared to use it, and I just have to figure out a different way to try and reduce the number of times I flip my project so that I'm not, every time I end a thread, I'm not flipping it over and securing it. I like to sort of save up a couple and I just park the ends up. So, because I work from the top down, I can park the ends, you know, they're sort of just over a needle length, so I've got enough to weave in at the back. I'll park that up above where I've been working, and then once I've got a couple, I'll turn the project over, pull them through to the back, and then secure them all at the same time. It just saves time. I hate flipping my project, basically. So here we go. This is the progress that I made, and again, it's another one that's got loads of half stitch in the background. And this time I just did it in pretty standard, you know, like half a cross stitch, so not even continental, and definitely not basket weave, just half stitch, because because there's so many more interlocking threads, it's got a lot firmer structure, so there's hardly any risk of it distorting and stretching across the bias like there is with other even weaves, say. So I just went for it, but I wasn't in the mood for doing half stitches because, you know, when you're planning your route through your stitches, it's different for half stitches than it is for whole stitches, because with whole stitches you always come back to the beginning with each row, rather with half stitch you kind of are alternating directions, and so it's a different route planning, and I'm less used to it and I don't enjoy it as much. So I just did enough of the half stitch background to get to the interesting parts with the full crosses, and I started working my way down with the sails, and I did pretty well actually. Got quite a lot of progress in there, and you can see even without all the back stitch of the rigging and defining the sails and all of that, just the shading and the dimensionality. So yeah, I was really pleased with that. So somewhere whilst working on the Galleon, so this must be in November, I was valiantly trying to catch up on Flosstube, and you can see how successful that was given that I'm still back in August. But I heard, I think on a couple of videos, mention of the Mervember sale in the Mirabilia Madness, Mayhem, I can't remember the name of the Facebook group, but there's a Mirabilia Facebook group that's having a Mervember sale. And when I heard it mentioned on the videos, I got the impression that it was any mermaid. So I thought, well, hey, I've got a mermaid that's really close to being finished. I bet I can get that done in November. And of course, this is finish number 2 since I saw you last. Red Mermaid by RTO. And just look at her. Oh, I'm so pleased to have her done. She's absolutely gorgeous. I mean, I just wish I had hair like that. A lot of days my hair does look that wild. It just doesn't look that good whilst doing it. But yeah, oh, I'm so pleased to have her done. It was a bit of a struggle with the lack of sort of seam allowance, as it were, the lack of border on the fabric provided in the kit. But there she is. And there was a surprising amount. I know when I mentioned last time, I enabled a lot of you to get the kit, but some of you said you were put off because you didn't like backstitch. And there isn't that much. You can see there that there's some in her hair and there's sort of the highlights that around her face and her body there's some. But the most of it is actually defining the scales. There's backstitch and metallic defining the scales in her tail. Let's see if I can get this to focus. Can you see it? Oh, it's not really coming out on the camera that I can see. Hopefully you can see it. So yeah, it turned out that actually the worst part of the backstitch was that it's in 8 different colours. Something like that anyway. But so it's 14 count navy Ada, Zweigart obviously from the orange band, it's provided in the kit, DMC threads provided in the kit. Yeah, so I was really pleased. I started it in May, so it was part of my birthday present, but I got it and started it a bit early. And finished it in November, so that was about 6 months from starting it to finishing it, and I've got a nice bit of fluff there. So not bad really. And so I posted the finished picture in the Mervember sale group, and then realised that it was supposed to be Mirabilia's only. I was like, oops, I hope this is okay. But whatever, I mean, even if it doesn't count as part of the sale, I'm not really a sale stitcher anyway, but that was the prompt for me. It gave me the impetus to pick it back up and actually finish it. And it had a lot less work in it to finish it than I even thought it did when I picked it up. So I was really pleased with that. There's just one thing I want to say. In my WIP parade, I said it's a kit by RTO, and I said, oh, it's an Estonian company, because on the back of the packet, hopefully it will show you, it says made in the EU, RTO Baltic, and then has an address in Tallinn, Estonia. But a lovely viewer, Marina, said actually RTO is a Russian company. So I'm assuming that they've got some sort of manufacturing and distribution in the EU, but actually they're based in Russia. So just wanted to get that correction out there. Thank you, Marina. So I want to frame her. I don't know how. I've got to figure out if I'm going to do anything, if I'm going to have to sew on some extra fabric, so I've got a bit more to do the framing. But yeah, I think she needs to go up on the wall. She needs to be out there so I can look at her and enjoy her, rather than being tucked away in the portfolio with all my other finishes. So having discovered that the Mervember sale was supposed to be for Mirabilia mermaids, I thought, oh, well, I've got one of those as well. So I decided to pick it up. And here we go, Siren in the Shipwreck. And I managed to make a decent amount of progress on the stitching in her tail. And I think I put in some of the silk. I hadn't put some of the silk in sort of down this bit, so, but I definitely made progress on her tail. So there's not too much left to do. There's just the sort of this side of her tail, a little bit of her fin up here, and then it will be the onto the beading. Oh, there's a little bit of back stitch I haven't done as well around her arms and body. This one's reasonably close to a finish, and I realised that I only finished one Mirabilia in 2017, so I definitely need to at least finish this one in 2018. So working on a Mirabilia and joining the Facebook group that I can't remember the name of, but it's the one hosting the Movember Sal, I'll put a link. Seeing everyone working on their Mirabilias, of course, I wanted to work on yet more Mirabilias, and I have a couple still kitted up. Obviously, I've still got Deco Spirits, which has completely stalled, and I'm kind of, that's eating away at me at the back of my mind. I need to make a decision about what I'm going to do with that. But I had a couple of others kitted up, and this was one of them. This is Angel of the New Dawn. It's number 65, and it's quite interesting in that it's not one that you see stitched often, even though she's quite beautiful, as are most, if not all, Mirabilia designs. But when I saw this, I just went with the called for materials. You know, I kitted this up in 2016 when I'd only just started stitching Mirabilias, so I didn't know anything about anything, and I was terrified to change fabric colours and all this, so I just went with everything that was called for. So the called for witch out linen doesn't seem to exist anymore, but there's an alternative Zygarde linen given, which you can get hold of, and so I just ordered it. And when it came, it's this ice blue colour, which is quite different to the picture. The picture looks kind of grey, really, not this ice blue. So then I started worrying, thinking, because I was hesitant to even kit this up when I saw it, even though I liked it, because she's an angel, and angels obviously have religious connotations, and I'm not religious. So I was really hesitant, thinking, I like the design, but do I really want an angel hanging on my wall? And it just so happened that around this time, I can't remember who it was in their Flosstube video, but someone made the point, a very good point, that, okay, you don't believe that angels are real, but you also don't believe that mermaids or unicorns or fairies are real, and you're happy to stitch those. I heard that and I thought, yes, that is wisdom, not least because it gives me a reason to buy the thing I want to buy. So I did. But then looking at this, looking at the cover picture and comparing it to this fabric, I thought those wings are basically gold and her dress is basically blues and greens. So on a blue fabric, that dress is going to fade into the fabric and those wings are going to pop right into the foreground, so your eye is just going to go straight to those wings every time. And I thought, if I've got reservations because it's an angel, I don't want the first thing I see every time I look at it to be the wings. I want to see her and then the wings be a secondary part of it. So I thought, I've got to change this fabric colour. So I've had it for, I don't know, at least 12 months, probably 18 months kitted up, and not done anything with it because I couldn't decide what fabric. Now, with starting a new business and everything, and also looking at the obscene amount of stash that I've got, I've been on a bit of an unofficial stitch from stash, so I'm not part of the group or anything, but I have tried to clamp down on any spending of stitch related stuff. It's not always worked. There's been a couple of things that sort of slipped through the net, but I've tried to be really, really, really strict, and that's working well for me. I'm actually using up what I've got in my kitted up box and what I've got in my stash, rather than seeing something new and just buying it just because, and then it getting added to the box and, you know, being years and years and years before I even come around to it. I have got more than enough stash to keep me out of trouble for a long time. So thinking about wanting to swap out the fabric for this, I decided to just go through my stash of fabric, and it turned out that pretty much the only piece that I had that was big enough was this 28 count Brittany, so I got Brittany in cream. And I thought, oh, hang on a minute, because you know it's a pretty big project, so it's the only piece, it's bigger than a fat quarter, the only piece that I had big enough. And this cream, wow, that meets my objective, doesn't it? Because these gold wings are much closer to the fabric colour. The fabric colour, being cream, puts me much more in mind of dawn, and you're supposed to be Angel of the New Dawn. That puts me sort of, the first golden rays of sunlight puts me more in mind of New Dawn than perhaps a twilight blue does. And whilst the dress doesn't leap off the fabric at you, it doesn't fade in to the blue quite so much. And also part of that is because I haven't done the back stitching around this part of the dress, whereas I have done it right at the bottom here and then in this sort of flounce over here. And so I'm really pleased that, I mean, as always, when I change something, I second guess my choices. It's just, I wouldn't be me if I didn't. But I am pleased with how this is working out. I think I made a good choice. I'm happier with this than I would have been if I'd stuck with the blue. But speaking of my buying restraint, I made a bit of an error. So it turns out that this project calls for number 102C, number 4 braid Krynic. And as I said, I kitted this up when I was only just new to Mirabilia, only new to Krynic. I think I'd only used it on one Mirabilia project before. So I ordered what I thought it was, but it turned out that this 102C that I ordered was the number 102 cord, not the number 102C number 4 braid. So I do need to, and that's what all of these gaps up here are. There should be all this sort of gold in the, I don't even know what you call it, you know, the arch design, and then in her headdress as well. So I need to buy this new spool of Krynic, but I'm trying to save up and wait until I need to buy a couple of things at the same time, so that at least I'm not paying the postage multiple times. And I mean, I've still got a fair bit to go. I've still got all of the flowers around the border. There's a load of backstitch still to do before I need to think about the Krynic. But I probably do need to do the Krynic before I do the beading. But yeah, I'm pretty pleased given that I only started her in November. That's just the thing that I love about Mirabilia, is like there's a perfect balance between blocks of the same colour, but then interests across the whole thing. Then because I work top down, I can really motor along putting in the blocks of colour, like these blocks of white. But then when I get a bit bored, I just park the thread, move on to the next bit, work a bit of a block of that colour. When I get bored of that, park it, and then so work across, and then come down and work again. So we've got this really nice blend of blocks, but with variety. So I don't get bored of them, and that's part of it, as well as loving the aesthetics and all the bling. That's one of the reasons that I really love Mirabilias. So finally in December, I'd made huge progress on the Angel of the New Dawn, but I got the itch again to have another new start. So I've lost track of how many new starts that is now, but at least I had 2 finishes. But anyway, so I've had this one, well, it's from a magazine, and this magazine came out in the summer. And as soon as I saw the magazine, I thought, oh yes, I have to do that one, as is my catchphrase. I mean, how many times do I see a cross-stitch project and not think, oh yes, I have to do it? So it's from issue 139 of Cross Stitch Gold, and as you can see, it's the beautiful cover project. It's Doreen Jones's Elegant Peacock. Well, I think this is the problem with these magazines. I think it's called Elegant Peacock because it says Elegant Peacock up at the corner here. I don't know if you can see that. I don't know if that's actually what it's called. That's what I'm going with anyway. So there we are. It's lovely and beautiful. It's got a load of Mill Hill beads. It's all lovely bright DMC colours with a fair bit of Krynic as well. I made a start on it. in Christmas, I think, in the holidays sometime. And this is where I've got up to. So I'm doing it exactly on the called for materials. So it's 28 count, it's Vigart cashel linen in white, which I happen to have in my stash, which I don't think is a big enough piece to restart Deco Spirits even if I wanted to, so it works well. Because this is a smaller project than I expected actually. And then, yeah, it's got all the Krynic and that. But this is an interesting one, talking about Deco Spirits. So my problem with Deco Spirits is that I really don't like number 8 braid on 32 count linen. It's just too bulky. But this project calls for 2 strands of number 4 braid on 28 count linen. And I didn't clock this, I just bought the number 4 braid. Probably because I was thinking, well, I'm more likely to work on 32 count, so I want number 4 braids, just, you know, for when it goes into my stash. And I didn't clock that it said work it with 2 strands. And so I tried. I started off just using 1 strand of the number 4 braid, and the coverage just wasn't good enough. So I'm giving it a go, doing it 2 strands. And it's a bit of a faff, I'll be honest, especially because I like to use a laying tool and make sure that the strands are lying flat and parallel, and with metallic they just don't like to behave. But it is worth it for the improved coverage. I could have swapped to 32 count, except for I don't think I've got much 32 count white material. Although this now being a smaller project than I realised, I probably do have a piece that would be big enough. But as it's a fairly dinky project anyway, I didn't really want to shrink it down. And hey, now at least I know that I really don't like 2 strands of number 4 on 28 count, and that number 4 isn't enough on 28 count coverage wise. So there we are. Quite pleased with that, and I just love the colours. These are my colours. I love blues and sort of teals and greens, and yeah, it's going to be beautiful when it's done. So there we have it. That is all of my stitching since my WIP parade up until December. So I'm really sorry that it took that long to get another video out, but I hope you felt it was worth the wait. As I say, I'm so pleased with those 2 finishes. I didn't set particular goals for 2017, but if you told me at the beginning of the year that I would have had those finishes plus all the other finishes that I managed, then yeah, I would have taken that. So I am thinking about doing a wrap-up video for 2017 to show the finishes that I managed to do, including a couple of other crafts that aren't cross-stitch. But you've seen quite a lot of those finishes already, so let me know in the comments if you think I should do it. And even if I don't end up doing the wrap-up video of 2017, I will try my best to not leave it that long before I do another WIP update. So it's been really fun to share my stitching with you today. Thank you for joining me. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. Happy stitching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.